Hello, I'm Porschia Parker Griffin, and I want to welcome you to the Career 101 podcast, a place for ambitious professionals and seasoned executives who want an edge in their career. We're talking about all of the things you were never taught or told when it comes to career growth, development, and change. Now, let's get into it. Today, we are talking about mindset and overcoming imposter syndrome with Dr. Jasmine Escalera. Dr. Jasmine Escalera is a certified career coach and founder of Jasmine Escalera Coaching. She created and launched the Empowered Hire, a community and group coaching program designed to help women of color find their next big role at a company that values them, making up to 50% more in their paycheck. She also hosts her own podcast called Her Next Career Move, which drops weekly episodes containing career advice for women of color professionals. Jasmine is a LinkedIn top voice and has been named one of the top career and job search experts for 3 consecutive years straight. Jasmine is a TEDx speaker with the talk Conquering Workplace Conformity as a Woman of Color, detailing her journey as a Latina in STEM. Jasmine was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and recently moved to Miami with her loving but often crazy dog, Cody. Hi, Jasmine. How are you today?
Hello. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for the introduction. And as you were talking about Cody, he's like right next to me doing whatever it is that he is doing. So if there's some weird sounds coming from this direction, please neglect them.
Cody is welcome to the conversation as well. I love all animals, but I'm a dog person. I love it.
But it's funny because at one point I had in my apartment a dog, a cat, a snake, a mouse, and a ferret.
Oh,
Simultaneous living in harmony.
wow. You are the ultimate pet mom. I don't know if I can handle all of that, Jasmine, but hats off to you for making that all work. I'm sure at some point in time, everything had their own mind and wanted to do something and, all that good stuff. So you're managing a lot of person. We are excited to have you with us to discuss overcoming imposter syndrome. But first, we want to know a little more about you. So tell me about 7-year-old Jasmine.
Oh my gosh, 7-year-old Jasmine. It's so funny that you asked me that question because when I was moving to Miami, I actually didn't realize that I had in my closet old pictures, old family photos. So I remember moving to Miami and going through these old family photos. They were even photos of my mom, my dad when they were kids. But I found this picture of me right around the age of 7, and I have this incredibly mischievous face look on, and I'm wearing a really cute dress, but there's this mischievous look in my face. And I would definitely describe 7-year-old Jasmine as that. I've always been the kind of person, and now looking back and thinking about her, I've always been the kind of person that wanted to explore and that wanted to have experiences. And, some people say exploration to them is like chartering the world and going to different countries. It wasn't necessarily about that for me. It was always just about getting the most out of every experience that I happened to be in. So that could even be in the experience I'm in right now, just having this conversation. But really, how can I max out the experience and also be a little bit playful? That's always something that I go back to. And I think that's how I would describe 7-year-old Jasmine is almost like mischievous, very aware, wanting to experience the world, and super playful.
I love that. What did 7-year-old Jasmine want to be when she grew up?
Oh my gosh. When I was little, okay, so my parents, maybe this wasn't the best in terms of parenting, but my parents used to let me watch like scary movies and all types. They didn't mind it, right? I think they enjoyed our faces, me and my cousins, when we lived together. And when I was younger, I really wanted to be like a police officer. And then as I got a little bit older, I wanted to be a forensic scientist or forensic psychologist. So I think I always wanted to be like a bad, confident, woman. I think I always wanted to be that. The framework of what I thought a strong, powerful woman would be at that time was like a a policewoman, an FBI agent, something like that.
Enforcing the law and order there, Jasmine. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Laying down the law.
laying down the law. Tell us about some highlights or pivotal moments in your career before you started your business.
Yeah, so I would say that like one of the biggest highlights was getting my PhD. Still, my dad, the look on his face when he tells people that his daughter got her PhD from Yale, it really brings so much joy to my soul. So I would say that was like a huge pivotal moment. And it wasn't just for my dad, I think it was also for my community. So I grew up in the project in Brooklyn where it was tough and it was challenging to quote unquote make it out. And for someone to not just make it out, but also to really hit that level of success so young and so early, I think that was just a really precious moment for me as a way to give back to my community. That was a joy. And I would say that the other most pivotal moment in my career was what really essentially brought me to my business. And I can't pinpoint this exact moment because people ask me this question a lot. It was the moment where almost like my foot went down and I was like, no more. And I was in very toxic work environments. I was a Latina in STEM, and I'm not trying to date myself, but I was, a Latina in STEM when there weren't really very many even women in the field. And so being a very proud and very outgoing, very Brooklyn Latina in this field was very challenging. And I accumulated a lot of success in the area, but through a lot of struggle and through a lot of fight. And also, and I talk a lot about this, also in a lot of ways, through a lot of giving up of myself and conforming. And so I had gotten to a point where I looked around and I was like, sure, I have the high level director title. I'm making great money, but is this really how I want to have accumulated this? Is this really how I wanted to have gotten here? And that was the moment where I put my foot down and really said, I want to be myself. I want to be confident here. I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I don't want to be in these toxic workplaces and try to mold myself to them. And that was really essentially what started me to thinking about building a business that would help and support and guide women of color because I just felt like I had no support. And when I was talking to other women of color, I felt like they felt the same way. So that was a very pivotal moment for me, was the moment I put my foot down and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And I think it is really powerful when we all equally, whether it be with ourselves or whether it be with others, put that proverbial foot down and say, I'm really going to create the change.
Wow. I had a lot of thought based on what you said, Jasmine. The first one on the highlight of getting your PhD, that's such an amazing accomplishment. We had an episode, it was episode 59 on should I get a PhD? And we talked about that with our guest. And I think that actually might come up again today as we talk about imposter syndrome, because I think sometimes people have that motive behind getting more degrees or certification. Um, wow, just want to acknowledge you for that. And also, I have definitely heard from a lot of our clients, mostly women and definitely women of color, about feeling a sense of conforming in their role and having to feel pressure to do that in different ways. It could be from how they wear their hair to the clothes they choose, to how they decide to talk. That definitely is something that I think a lot of women out there experience. You might have been leading here, but I want to know what motivated you to become a coach?
What motivated me to become a coach was almost like the same way that I coach my clients to find passion and purpose in this area of their lives. And for me, it was about knowing what I was really good at doing, what I was strong at doing, but equally what I was good at doing and continued to want to do. It was about knowing what my internal purpose and kind of mission was, like what really touched my heart in terms of my career and my profession. It was also knowing where I wanted to grow myself and where I was interested in growing and learning more. When I coach clients who come to me and say, I don't feel that passion, I don't feel that purpose, and I want to find another path, or I want to make a transition, or I want to make a pivot, or I even just want to bring more of that passion and purpose into my work, it's really about understanding those core things. And so I was my own patient zero, my first experiment. And I really loved and enjoyed not just only building teams, but understanding almost like Tetris, what person fits in what role because of how they want to grow, how they want to develop, and what they're great at doing. And so I really enjoyed putting people in the right kinds of positions, giving them the right kinds of work. I really enjoyed getting to know the person on both a professional, but also a personal level. Because when we talk about internal drive and internal mission, so much of that can also be a personal factor as much as it is a professional factor. So I always wanted to know the deeper root of who this individual was, what was their story, and how this all kind of came together. And I had a coworker of mine just say, "You're so good at mentoring and guiding and leading and putting these teams together. You should be a coach." And I was really like, I don't know, the light bulb went off and I was like, "What is that?" And after exploring it and after really thinking about my path, my journey, how hard it was, hearing the stories of other women of color that I was just networking with and just trying to validate myself, honestly, in terms of I'm not alone. And just the work that I was doing, I was like, this seems really cool. And I didn't know that I was going to create a business in it. I was actually doing it more so to help me in my professional career. But then once I came to that space of, okay, this is just not working for me. I don't know, this space, this environment just doesn't work for me. Then I decided to give myself a shot with the business and no regrets. It's hard as growing a business, developing a business, got its challenges. And maybe that's a whole nother podcast episode, the challenges of being an entrepreneur. But it is one of the most fulfilling aspects of my life that I get to work with women who align with the way that I think and vibe, and I align with the way that they think and vibe. And to bring these women together, especially in group programs like the Empowered Hire, and to see not just how they ask for my support and guidance, but how they feed off of the support and guidance of each other, that's just transformative. It makes every single struggle in terms of developing a business so worth it.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. We have a whole series on entrepreneurship on this podcast because to your point,
Yeah.
there's a lot of mindset work. There's a lot of learning, growing, developing, training that goes into entrepreneurship as well. How did you decide to focus on career coaching?
Yeah, so when I first started, and again, because I was patient zero, like I was the almost like the person I was designing a business for. And I didn't know that at the time that I was doing that. But looking back, I think that was the greatest way to build my business was I didn't have any clients, so I didn't know who I was marketing to, but to almost essentially use myself as the person I would market to. What did I want to hear? What did I want to know? What did I want to learn? And because my career was such an important aspect of my life, and I felt like I was both successful and floundering at the same time, it just made sense for me to really focus in on that area. Growing up in the projects of Brooklyn, I was really told, hey, get an education, get a great job. And that's really where my value resided for a very long time. So I placed a lot of emphasis on my career. And so it made sense for me to really focus my coaching on career because I felt like a lot of women were also putting their success, their fulfillment, and their emphasis on that area of life too, because it's the area of life where I feel like you have max control, where you are really the one that dictates where you go, the positions, the opportunities. So I think I was just naturally gravitating towards that because I was finding it to be the most challenging aspect of my life. But at the time, it was also the most important aspect of my life.
Wow, I think that's very powerful, and I agree. I also, to add on, for me, I always thought the career space is an area where no one really teaches you about that. Most people are just trying to figure it out on the fly. And to your point about having a community, it can be so beneficial to just have that support from other people. I also
Yeah,
love, oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I agree. I think that especially for if you come from certain communities, certain backgrounds, you really are given this map of this is the way it's supposed to work in order to have the success that someone in your family didn't have or the members of your family before you didn't have. And I totally get that. But then you don't learn it from your family members, or at least I couldn't because my mom didn't go to college until I was way in my 20s. My dad didn't graduate high school, but they gave me some magical map that I was supposed to follow, and they had yet not followed it. So I didn't get instruction from them. College didn't teach it to me. High school didn't teach it to me. They teach you skills, but even skills that you actually don't even translate into the workplace. So this is an area of life incredibly difficult to navigate. And when it is incredibly difficult to navigate, but it also is attached to your financial security and stability, that can trigger a lot of wild things going on in your mind and a lot of different ways that you can see yourself that can impact you in a very negative light. So, this is, I want for everyone who's listening to know that if you're not feeling yourself in your career and things don't feel right, just understand baseline, that it's very difficult to navigate this area. There's no such thing as a linear career path. Job searching is challenging right now. We live in a different kind of world where AI and tech tools are changing the system. So it's just a challenging space to be in. So I just want to make sure that any listener who's listening to this, and because we are talking about a topic that is very based on mindset, just understand that A, you're not alone, and B, it is challenging.
I completely agree. And to the point of it being challenging, I wrote down something else that you said earlier about feeling like you're successful and floundering at the same time. And I've had that experience. And I think I've heard so many clients have that experience. They didn't put it in the exact way that you articulated it, but I think that is really common for people. And that's where mindset can come in. Before we get into deep with mindset, I want to know, what is your definition of mindset?
Yeah, for me, mindset is really about an awareness of what's going on in your mind and an awareness of your thought patterns and the knowledge that your thought patterns, whatever you are thinking, are truly coming from beliefs that were integrated into your system, your soul, your mind by the age of 7, 8 years old. What we have to understand is that our minds can run amok, and the vast majority of the thoughts that we have are traditionally negative. Now, that is actually a biological mechanism that is utilized to support you and support your survival. But in today's society, being that we are not running away from lions and we typically are not in the state of survival or needing to think about survival, those negative thoughts have now just run our regular day. And much of those negative thoughts do come from beliefs that you learn from the individuals around you as you grow up, your parents, teachers, people that you presume to be individuals that can support and impact you in a positive light. And they often very much do. But whatever their traumas or systemic beliefs were, they basically just translate that down to you. So your mindset is the knowledge that there are thoughts that run your behaviors, and those thoughts stem from beliefs that you acquired in childhood. And just becoming aware of what those thoughts are is a mindful practice and really being able to connect to that so you can shift or change behaviors based off of shifting or changing beliefs.
Wow. I think that was a writer downer, Jasmine. So I've seen imposter syndrome hold many executives and professionals back in their career. For those who don't know, what is imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome to me really is that feeling of self doubt. Imposter syndrome is that moment where self doubt is running the show, where negative thoughts are running the show, and where you feel like I should be able to just step into this space knowing my experiences, my accomplishments, my capabilities, and run the show. But I am incapable of doing so because I have negative thoughts or self doubt that is higher than my knowledge of self. So it's really this feeling of like almost being incapable of showcasing the best representation of you because those negative thoughts and self doubt just happen to be running the show in the moment.
Wow. I think you articulated that very well. And I haven't heard anybody really talk about it that way. So I love it. How have you seen imposter syndrome hold people back in their careers? The Career 101 podcast is brought to you by Fly High Coaching, where we help our clients soar to their full potential. More and more professionals and executives are setting out to achieve their career goals. But without the right support, it can be difficult, if not impossible. Whether you need career coaching, interview coaching, or a professional resume, we're here to help. Check us out on our website, fly-highcoaching.com.
Yeah, this happens a lot. I work a lot with job seekers. And for me, when it comes to the women that I work with in the Empowered Hire, the number one way that this holds them back is right at the start of the job search. They will not even allow themselves to apply for positions that they deem to be out of scope for themselves. Even if they have the experiences, even if they have the drive, even if they know for sure that they can learn it on the job, it's almost like a disqualification or a discrediting of self immediately off the bat. The way it can also show up for job seekers going through the process is feeling like you don't have anything to give in a networking conversation, so you just don't have networking conversations. Or feeling like you can't really talk to someone above you because they're God, they're holier than thou, even though they're just a regular person, but you're putting these individuals on a pedestal. Or it can come up in the interview process when you feel like you can't connect to your value or you can't brag, quote unquote, brag about yourself or sell yourself. For professionals in general, it can come with a capping of self. So you're not going for the promotions. You're not asking for the pay raises. You're not showing up in the spaces and environments owning your voice. It's almost like you're paralyzed to speak or to showcase your expertise. So it really shows up in a lot of varieties of different ways. But I think that imposter syndrome is really intriguing because I come at everything from perspective. So I think that how you view something can either disempower you or empower you. So there is a way that you can see imposter syndrome that could be seen from a positive lens. And the way that you can do that is to say to yourself, imposter syndrome is traditionally triggered when you are stepping outside of your comfort zone. And what does everybody in both the spiritual and development world tell you should be doing in order to grow, in order to develop, in order to claim the life that you want? Step outside of your comfort zone. So imposter syndrome actually can be seen as, wow, I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. And yes, that is going to trigger certain thoughts, certain ideas, and certain concepts. But if I just, in essence, know that when I step outside of my comfort zone, things might get a little bit sticky, but I do have the capacity to learn. I do have the capacity to seek help, and I do have the capacity to be my best self, then right there, you're already stopping the process of imposter syndrome running you, and you're essentially saying this is just a part of growth. So imposter syndrome can be seen as just a growth factor, a part of.
Wow. So I want to piggyback on that. I loved your thought that you shared about viewing things in either an empowering way or a disempowering way. How would someone know if they're viewing something in a way where, hey, they're just stepping outside of their comfort zone, or, hey, they really need to get more support, knowledge, resources in a specific area?
I love this question so much, and thank you so much for asking it. When we have a thought, right, a negative thought, I don't feel good, or I don't feel like my accomplishments are enough, which is a very common imposter syndrome or self-doubt thought. The way that you challenge a negative thought is to question its factual basis. So, is this thought true? And now, what's interesting about this process is if you can be so tapped into your thought process, to your thought stream, that you can connect to a thought that fast and say, wait a second, I'm feeling a little doubtful here. Okay, I'm feeling doubtful here because I'm in a new space. I've got a level up position, and I'm just feeling a lack of confidence around my capabilities. And if you can ask yourself, is this true? Then from a fact base, not emotional, from a fact based perspective, you can really start to ask yourself questions like that. So, is this true? I mean, I'm here, right? I got the promotion. So these individuals really do feel I have the experience. I do feel I have the experience, but they're talking about a few things that I actually don't know about. Okay, so I don't know these things. So what can I do to gain this knowledge? So if we were to not let the emotions run the show, but actually to flip into more of a fact-based and almost exploratory process with ourselves and our negative thoughts, we would actually come very easily to what you're talking about, which is what's true and what do I need versus is this really not even true and my mind is just running amok.
I love how you explain that. So, you talk about stepping into your dopeness as a strategy for overcoming imposter syndrome. Can you explain how that might look in someone's life?
It starts with saying that you are dope, as we all are. I want you to be your biggest affirmer and I want you to be your biggest cheerleader. It's strange. This is a little off topic, but recently I started this journey of really trying to be like my best physical self, physical health. Maybe because I live in South Beach and now I wear a bikini all the time, but I'm like, girls gotta look fly. I'm hitting 42 soon. What I've been doing every single day is using myself again as patient zero and really saying to myself, how do I affirm myself every single day so that I feel the most and max self-love? And then I can come from that is to work on myself rather than critiquing every little area of my body, right? So when we think about just stepping into your dopeness, it starts with the affirming of self and really understanding how you are dope. And when we are working professionals, it's challenging because you are going through a day-to-day rigor and row and you're getting the work done and you're getting the achievements done, but you're not really connecting to how those achievements are impacting the company's bottom line, are impacting the team's bottom line, are doing something really cool and great. So, when it comes to affirming yourself, what I always tell every professional is you have to keep an I'm dope journal, right? Like you have to be the one that is writing down all of your wins and accomplishments. This is, I think, one of the biggest tools and tactics to confidence building and to beating imposter syndrome. Because if you are on a weekly basis writing down all the great things that you're doing and you're tapping into your greatness every single day, you're telling yourself you did a good job, you're your biggest cheerleader, you beat these negative feelings and negative thoughts and you start to create different neural networks and different belief patterns from those neural networks. So you have to really think about it from the perspective of I need to know what I'm great at doing and I need to be doing that, but I also need to be showing myself the evidence that I am great. And for me, when I had imposter syndrome, and I didn't even know it was imposter syndrome because I didn't hear about imposter syndrome until I became a career coach. So when I had imposter syndrome, not even knowing what it was, I thought I was straight up crazy. I thought I was just like, I must be the only person in the world who is feeling this way. And stepping out and talking to other professionals, especially other women of color, and having them say, I feel that way too. That was really amazing in terms of getting support, getting validation. So I would also say like having a supportive network in the work environment is so incredibly important, or even a supportive network, professional network outside of the work environment. Take stock of who you're around. When I was in toxic work environments, I would have a crew of people and we would just yap about how terrible the work environment was. Until one day I realized, wow, we're still all coming to work the next day. Like nothing's changed. You have to really think about, am I around empowering people? Am I around people who can help grow and help me thrive? Am I around people who've had these experiences, but also have gotten out of these experiences? I think that's exceptionally important. So seeking support. I also think it's really important when you think about imposter syndrome to understand what the triggers are. And that can be really helpful going back to what you mentioned before. So if you understand what the triggers are, then you really can start to think about, is this real or is this not? Right? So if you are triggered in your imposter syndrome because you've gotten a promotion, that's awesome, right? That's a great thing. And you might just have some additional areas that you need to work on. But if you're triggered in your imposter syndrome because you're in a toxic workplace, because you have a micromanaging boss, because you're at a company that doesn't care about your value or your growth, that means something. And that means that you really have to think about, am I going to be able to thrive here? And no matter how much I work on my mindset, my imposter syndrome, my confidence, is this really the space that's going to help me navigate being my dope version of myself?
You are dropping a lot of gems on us, Jasmine. I definitely think that people should go back and listen to this episode twice. I just love everything that you shared, from the keeping the I'm dope journal to just really understanding your triggers. I think those things are really helpful for people. So tell us more about your business.
Yeah, wow, I have so much I can say about I feel like I need a therapy session for my business. My business is as I mentioned, the greatest joy in my life, and I'm so glad that you talked about entrepreneurship here because entrepreneurship is something that I think that a lot of women of color are getting into, and I really believe it's because we are just so sick and tired of being devalued in these corporate spaces that we're stepping into and transitioning into being our own bosses, which is so amazing to see. I love seeing it and I love supporting it. My business, I started in the career space. I have the Empowered Hire, which is a job seeker coaching program for women of color. And I'm really looking forward to my next venture, really trying to focus a bit more on the question of what does success and fulfillment truly mean to you? And this goes back to what I said before that I felt like I was both successful but also floundering. And I think that the reason I felt that way is because everybody else had defined success for me, but I had not yet defined success for myself. And so when we really take the time to ask ourselves, what does success mean to me? What does fulfillment mean to me? What would it look like to feel happy every day, either in my career or in my life or in my relationships? But when we really take that time to reflect and think about these big questions, but really important questions, we start to notice that maybe potentially the reason why we feel successful but floundering is because we're not actually living our version of success.
Ooh, I completely agree. And so now I have to ask Jasmine, what is your definition of career success?
So I think my definition of career success is you defining it on your terms. So I really love this concept and idea of the Webster's dictionary is fantastic, but every word can truly be defined by the person who is speaking it and who is living it. So I really think that success can be defined by each individual person in their career as a different thing. I also do believe that when we define words, unlike the Webster's dictionary where the definition does not change, the definition does change when it comes to your career and when it comes to your life. I believe that every career is built off of season, and it depends on what season of life you're in, and really understanding what season of life you're in and how that translates to what you need in your career. So when I was young and I was vibrant and I wanted to learn everything and I wanted to move up the ladder, I was willing to be in certain kinds of environments and I was willing to wear the 15 different hats. I was willing to go above and beyond. But when I had gotten to a certain stage in my life where I had other priorities, I was building my business, that changed how I saw success. That changed how I saw my career. So I think it's really important that we always ask ourselves, what does success mean to me? What is going on in my life? And how can my career support my life? Because your career is an aspect of your life. And what needs to change to be able to bring a little bit more harmony into those spaces?
Love it. I love it. We'll be providing a link to your website and other social channels in our show notes so people can find you online. But what is the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
I tell everybody that I be on the LinkedIn streets all the time, man. So hit me up on LinkedIn. I love seeing people coming into my DMs, sending connection requests. I really love having conversations with folks in the DMs. So please hit me up on LinkedIn, connect with me, hit me up a DM, and let's see how I can support you.
That's great. That's great. I slid in your DM, Jasmine, on the show. So I can attest to that. Now I want to ask you our final question that I ask all of our guests. How do you think executives or professionals can get a positive edge in their career?
Yeah, so this is such a great question. I really think the most important thing is to listen to yourself. And maybe perhaps this is just because of the stage of life that I am particularly in, but I think that there's a lot of external noise and there's a lot of defining of things for you instead of us really taking the time and opportunity to be more self-reflective, introspective, and to really ask ourselves, what is it that I want and what is it that I need and what is it that I deserve? So, what I would say to everyone is baseline, take stock of where you are and ask yourself if you are really happy being there. And if so, then think about, okay, what's my next step and what are the gaps I need to fill? And if the answer is no, then A, no, that's okay. And B, take the time to ask yourself some of these big questions. What do I like? What do I enjoy? What does success mean to me? So it's always about reflecting and continual reflecting and always listening to that internal voice that's telling you that there's more because there is and you deserve it.
Jasmine, you have shared a lot of wisdom with us today, and I'm sure our listeners can use it to be more confident in their careers. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode was brought to you by the Bravebird Career Alliance, the go-to membership designed for seasoned executives and ambitious professionals with everything you need for career planning, strategy, training, and support. Thank you again for listening to the Career 101 podcast. I hope you have at least one key takeaway that you can use in your own career. If you enjoyed hanging out with us, please rate, subscribe, and share this podcast. Until next time, here's to your success.